Here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts. Ever wonder what bridges the gap between your favorite film genres, subgenres, and movements? CinemaScope is here to explore these connections, taking you on a thrilling odyssey through the ever-evolving art of cinema. I'm your host, Andy Nelson, and in each episode, we embark on a deep dive into the forces that sculpt the world of film. From the styles you know and love, like heist films or the French New Wave, to the ones you may not be as familiar with, like Turkish Yeşilçam or Brazilian Nordwesterns, my expert guests and I unravel the complex tapestry of storytelling, style, and innovation that defines the world of film as we unpack the myriad catalysts of change that shape these diverse styles. Whether you're a student of film, a creative professional, or simply a devoted movie enthusiast, CinemaScope is your gateway to a richer, more immersive film experience. Don't just watch movies, understand them, appreciate them, and revel in their artistry with CinemaScope. Subscribe today.
All the Feelings presents Sins and Virtues. This episode...
Charity.
Pete, it's number 2 of our 9th season. How are you feeling about how things are going so far with the sins and the virtues?
Well, so far it's only the sins. We'll reserve judgment until after this recording session
You
to
want
see
a whole
how
package.
the virtues are
you
going.
Want one sin, one virtue.
I
to see
feel
how
like
it's
they
going.
come in pairs. That's what I'm saying. There's a real duo.
I already have a snap judgment to say, and this is something that I know that maybe you shared a little bit because we were texting about it, maybe not. So far, the sin has been so much easier to think about and write about than the virtue, and I don't know what that says about me. Because this one, I pretty much came up with what I want to talk about last night. I didn't have anything, and then I went down a horrible rabbit hole that was going to make me look terrible, and now I pulled back a little bit, and I might just look a little terrible after my segment. We'll see. But it is a conversation. It's a big shoving match I'm having with the idea of charity.
Oh, outstanding.
And so charity. Let's first, what is charity? Robot?
Charity, noun, the voluntary giving of help, typically in the form of money to those in need.
That was some of Robot's best work.
Thank you.
This is such an interesting one because I feel like that definition really celebrates the modern version of charity and the version of charity that just makes me feel crappy all the time.
Okay. Why? That's interesting.
Well, because I feel like especially at tax time, that's when I'm most thinking about charity, which is, God, did I give enough this year?
Yeah.
I probably underdid it, or I took too much care of my family and not enough of the things that are important to me in the world, or something like that. And I will say that's not true. Like I feel like a charitable person. I think. Do you?
Yes, because I finally, starting with the pandemic, and I'll get into that because I want to talk about that a little bit. What a surprise. Talk about the pandemic on this podcast. But I started setting up monthly donation things. Yeah. Where I just set them up and I don't think about it. And I'm donating to about 5 things.
See, that's so good. We do
but
that
not
too.
very much, like just $10 a month each. But I think that the idea is that it will stack up.
That stuff matters, right? Yeah. If everybody did that, we'd be in pretty good shape, right?
The best part is, and I mentioned this to you, is when I give money to, like, let's say Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood.
Is it time to podcast?
No, or the ACLU or whatever that I give to. They're always consistently like, thank you so much for the money. Can we have some more money? And I'm like, wait, but I just gave you money. And they're like, we know you should give some more money. It's so weird.
So proud.
And now they're
you
sending
want to be
me
more proud.
Yeah, they're sending me things in the mail being like, oh, it's so cold outside. We need money. And I'm like, you only know who I am because I give you money already every month. There's something weird about that.
Yes.
There's a give an inch, take a mile. I don't know what that phrase means, but yeah.
Well, and that actually, one of my great fantasies is to be an anonymous billionaire industrialist, right? That I am not known and can give and just let it be, and not be on a mailing list. You know, like here's a rain barrel of cash. and it has no names associated with it, and no one's ever going to trace a rain barrel to me.
No.
And so that's how I want my giving to be. But I feel like you can't do that anymore.
Then they flip it over and it's like Pete's rain barrel, and you're like,
it's just the top
idiot.
layer of cash.
Yeah. The rest is just all of the leaflets that they gave you.
Yeah. It's just their mail returned.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I gave them about $75 and all their junk mail.
Well, you brought up, may I talk about what I was going to talk about? Do you think that is now a good time, or did you want to give...
I don't know. Is it a good time? The show is your show.
I think
it's a special day.
It's because you talked about feeling crappy, thinking about charity and feeling crappy. I want to talk about something that I went through, and I wanted to talk about it because it makes me feel difficult about charity, which is a weird thing to feel about. Now, wait, to start this, I have a question. Pete, when you were growing up, what were you told about giving money to people on the street who were asking for money? Do you remember?
Man, I feel like that has changed over the years multiple times.
Do you remember
at one point it was don't give money to people on the street because you're just encouraging them.
Right.
Right. If you make it too easy, they're not going to go get a job or find a place to live. Like you're making it too easy on them. That's like seems to be a super conservative approach.
I forgot you grew up in the Depression. That is a very conservative. I was a version of that, whereas they will just spend it on alcohol or drugs.
Oh, drugs, alcohol, drugs.
That's what I was always sort of told. And I feel like didn't just come from my parents. I talked to a couple different friends, and they were like, that was a real party line for a while. Yes. And I guess I believed that. I guess I thought it made sense. I was a kid and dumb.
Well, you weren't asking. Like, does that make sense?
I wasn't asking.
Like,
I was
asking?
I had a big, my parents. Like my parents were talking. And I was just walking down the street with my great big lolly. And as the kids do.
And your lederhosen.
Yeah, slingshot in my back pocket. Oh, you went a different way. I was going real. I don't know why I was going tomboy. I was a boy. Anyways. Now, when I think about that idea, when I give, because I mean, the sheer amount of the unhoused around Los Angeles County, it's a problem everywhere. But I mean, I think Fox News will say we're the worst, if that helps. They regularly hold us up, apparently, as the worst. The idea of giving someone some money and that they might use some of that money for, like, having a drink, I'm like, so? I don't know if this makes me a creep, but I'm like, yeah, that actually, I don't have enough money to dramatically change their life. Like I can't lift them out, but if I can give them $5, they can get some food and maybe a drink to make their one night get a little better. Why not? Is that okay to feel that way? I mean, have things changed? I mean, I have trouble. Because I don't live in a tent, because I don't live under a tunnel, I can't imagine how uncomfortable that can be. And so for me to stand on top and say, no, I can't give you this hay penny because you might spend it on something that's not good for you. It's like, what am I doing?
Well, also nobody takes hay pennies.
Well, if you have a hay penny, God bless you. Right.
This is the thing though, because, I wonder if there is just how much logic there is to that argument that if you give money, because the problem is not just unhoused. And, here in Portland, it's an extraordinary problem, not just the unhoused population, but the population that needs mental health support and needs drug support. And it's really, really bad. And I don't know like how to judge what that looks like. And I'll tell you, just from our perspective, like there are fantastic organizations that support feeding the unhoused that already have infrastructure set up. And so, rather than giving money on a street corner, we give money directly to the organizations that feed the unhoused. And that feels like a more like direct answer to the thing we're trying to be a part of solving. But I don't have an answer to that other question. Like
we have versions of that.
My daughter has an answer, which is protein bars. Like they always have a box of protein bars in the car and they give out protein bars instead of money.
Oh, I like that. That works.
It's not bad.
Sure.
Not bad. Yeah.
So let's flash forward to the year 2020. Nothing big happened then, right? Okay.
No.
Two big things, the coronavirus pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm using exact timing loosely.
Mm-hmm.
I, like a lot of people, wanted to help out and be a part of the country moving forward. And while people were marching, I didn't march. I did not go to protests. I stayed home and tried to do my part with my pocketbook. I started donating a lot of money to the Marshall Project, to ACLU, to a number of organizations that would help fight the fight that I believed in. And I was not, when I was talking to friends over Zoom, they asked if I was going to protests, and I said no, mainly because of two reasons. One, COVID, and number two, this is going to sound really dumb, but I have a dependent who I can't carry in a stroller. He's a furry dog, and I'm never equating my dog with a human child, but sometimes human children are allowed into public spaces when dogs aren't. And I couldn't just sort of take him out there. But I made it clear that I was donating actual money to these organizations. And something unfortunate happened by some people, not all. I was charity shamed. I was made to feel less than because I was just giving money versus showing up. And I don't know how I feel about that. Yes, they were gathering together on a corner with signs. That is incredibly important. But why is my financial donation not as important? I'm giving actual money, not just protesting. I can afford it, and so is my money just not helping? It reminds me a little bit, if I can be a little angry, it reminds me a little bit of the ice bucket challenge when that was a hot new craze. And I know a number of people who did the challenge on video and nominated friends to do it next. But then when asked, they didn't donate any money to ALS research.
Right.
They just did the thing.
Totally lost the impact when people forgot that they actually do it and then have to donate.
And then supposed to donate. I mean, aren't both of those parts important? The actual money and the actual showing up and being there. And there's a real school of thought currently saying, yes, Tommy, it's all aimed right at me, the internet, that just donating money can be harmful. One of the reasons it takes charity out of the public sector and puts it in the private sector, meaning that real institutional change, mostly from government, is needed to actually solve these systemic problems. Throwing money from a private sector is just providing a Band-Aid that lets real change sort of hide. But again, I have trouble with the idea of letting...
I got to interject. You got to let me say something here. Because I feel like that hides one of the key motivators for change in government, which is that money that you're giving to the big institutional, like industrial charities. Some of it goes to feeding the unhoused. Some of it goes to, medicines to, communities in need. Some of it goes to other change, but some of it goes toward lobbying efforts to actually directly try to influence the change that you want to see in the world. And you can't say that standing on a corner with a sign in a march is I think out of balance or doing more good than having somebody who's actually in there, like working on legislation
on the inside.
They can both be used for good or ill, right? And that's the thing we have to understand. But I don't think it's fair to say, because you're not out there marching with a sign, that your money is not having some impact. It is partaking in some impact,
right?
And it might be coming from a place of a place of privilege. I'm saying that talking to myself too. But also thoughtfulness. Like, it's not like we didn't do the research before we started doing our donation. It's not like, right? Like,
charity
navigator. We want to understand where the money is going and what impact it's having. So I don't care for that angle.
I agree. And again, I if I've accidentally sounded dismissive of protesting or showing up, I'm not at all. I'm reacting in defense of being called out for not doing that, but actually, donating money. And you said privilege. Yes, because I am in a place of privilege and can't afford to do it, I can. If you can't do it, then I totally get it. I'm not saying more people have to do it. I'm just saying that one, weirdly for a while, got overshadowed by the other. I yelled out two words when you were talking. Charity Navigator is a great site if you're looking to find out which kind of charities. They are a nonprofit that looks at all charities, and they have they rates charities on accountability, finance, leadership, and all these other metrics. And so all of the ones that I currently donate to, like Amnesty International and Covenant House California, these are all like 95% or above good charities. I don't know what the phrases is. Either way, so yes, there are things to do, because there are also, sadly, a lot of terrible charities out there. Originally,
that are nothing more than fronts.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yeah. The Kids Wish Network. If you want to look up one, the Kids Wish Network is the Better Business Bureau is like, what are you doing? There's no kids, there's no wishes. There's just a picture of John Cena on the front of their website. Anyways.
Oh, dear.
So that's all, I guess. And I didn't know if this would lead to a debate, but it sounds like you and I are sort of like-minded. Both of those things are important. If you're able to give money, though, I don't think you should feel weird shame about that. Right. I feel that that's something to be celebrated. And also, like Sophie and what they are doing, also donating actual food, actual time is something that also I like to do. I don't do enough of. That's where I feel guilty, that I need to give more actual like food. Like my parents and I always do it at Christmas when I'm back in Boulder. We always all the shelters and food banks put up lists of the stuff that they are most in need of. And it's mostly like, it's a lot of toiletries, travel size toiletries. And so we bombard Target, and the people at Target think that we're insane, because instead of buying like 3 normal size tubes of toothpaste, we're buying 20 tiny ones. And they're like, there's a better way to do this, right? So I'm sure we're on a poster somewhere.
I just want to throw out that the closer to local you can with your charity work, that's usually that in my experience is closer to the problem. We have a number of charities here that are like specifically downtown based charities that serve and going and serving breakfast and like donating your time to help these. I'll shout out the Blanchet House. It's run by a colleague, and I think it does some incredible work, and love. I mean, it used to be when she had time to do it, Kira was there once a week, every week, serving breakfast and cleaning tables. And that was just kind of like, she took on our family's sort of weekly effort when I stayed home and walked the dog, like it's just things that you take on as a family. And so, we try to do that, try to make sure that the work that you put in is having a direct impact. And sometimes that's money, and sometimes that's holding a sign. And sometimes it's just going and, serving oatmeal to people who need some oatmeal.
That's the problem, though, is because you do it once and then they're like, thank you for the oatmeal. Could you serve more oatmeal? And you're like, could
you also serve this bacon?
More eggs, please. And I'm like, I'm literally serving eggs right now. More eggs, please.
But also you should serve more eggs.
And while you're at it, more money.
In a quiet corner of Gloucestershire, England, a mysterious and dangerous tradition takes place every spring, a tradition some call madness. This is Cooper's Hill Cheese Rolling and Wake, a cheese-centric custom that's been taking place for centuries, though no one knows quite how or why it began. Here's how it works. A large wheel of double Gloucester cheese weighing 7 to 9 pounds is sent rolling down the steep Cooper's Hill, and a group of fearless or perhaps foolish competitors hurl themselves down the hill after it, risking life and limb in pursuit of glory and daring. It's not as easy as it looks. Injuries are common. Paramedics are on standby to scrape up the fallen and pack them off to hospital. But remarkably, this doesn't seem to deter these brave cheese chasers. Some speculate the tradition began as a pagan ritual, with bundles of burning brushwood rolled down the hill to represent a new year after winter. Others say it evolved from a way to maintain grazing rights. But the true origins remain a bit of a mystery, lost in the mists of fermented curds. Despite the risks, the event brings the community together in a spirit of charity, funds are raised to purchase the cheese and provide prize money for the winners, it's also a time for the people of Brockworth to unite and celebrate their quirky cheese-loving heritage. What motivates these cheese pursuers to risk broken bones for a wheel of double Gloucester? Is it dairy devotion, adrenaline addiction, a need to uphold tradition at any cost in service of the greater community? As we watch them tumble down Cooper's Hill, these ancient questions roll on unanswered, much like the cheese itself. Want to give back to something you don't have to chase, like at all? Become a feeling friend today for just $35 a season, renewing $25 after that. You get to support the time and expenses of me and Uncle Tommy as we produce this show. You get access to the members live stream. You get your own personal podcast feed with extended episodes of every one of these shows, and all of the bonus material that we've ever put in here, like our trailers, classic trailers. You know what? Public doesn't get old trailers, but you could if you were a friend, a feeling friend. And of course, you get our undying love. Visit allthefeelings.fun today and give your charity a roll for its money. Now back to the show. All right, Tom, this is the thing about charity. May I begin?
No, please.
So this is the thing about charity that I struggle with, because you know me. I want to go back to the early interpretations of charity. And what do you think? Like when you think about, where did charity start? What does it mean to you?
Where did charity start? What does it mean to be? There was a long time ago, there was an extremely rich people and extremely poor people. And the rich people were like, give them a little bit of money. I don't know. Like, I'm thinking of kings. I'm thinking of weird, like.
Let me give you a hint. Let me give you a nudge.
Yeah.
Remember last week when we were talking about sloth?
Yeah.
And the early origins of sloth?
Yes.
What were people really afraid of? And like, who was the most afraid of sloth when sloth was a new thing?
The religious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Tom.
Yeah.
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 Remember with sloth, it was like, but people are slothful when they turn their face away from God.
Right.
And,
it wasn't about eating.
Right. We just
flaming
really,
hot
we need people to
Cheetos.
go to church.
Right.
Yeah. That's
right.
what we really need. And oh my goodness, you wouldn't even believe it when I tell you that it turns out that a charity's roots, going back to the ancient roots, were charity in support of religious beliefs and obligations in motivating charitable acts in the form of sacrificing to God. Right?
To God or to God institutions?
Both.
Okay.
In so far as the challenge is kept, because some of it is like, here's the institution, but when you go far enough back to the belief systems, you can go back to sacrificing like livestock and sacrificing people and sacrificing, like, they all have a shared root in charitable contexts, right?
Because you're sacrificing something of yours to someone else. That's charity.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Huh. I never thought about sacrificing a goat as charity. I thought it was some sort of weird.
This is it.
Blood sport. Okay, got it.
It's a blood sport. But this is the thing that I think makes charity, discussions of charity, so hard.
Yeah.
Is that so much of charity is rooted in a Judeo-Christian kind of philosophy, that it is about. You're a real Bible head, right? It's about giving to those in need, right? And the church has such an engine of giving, right? We tithe, and then the church is supposed to go do the stuff that we need, that we run into specific conflicts as the notion of charity moves into the modern era and secularism becomes a thing of note, right? When fewer and fewer people are going to church, charity has to change, right?
Because normally you would do everything through the church.
Yes.
You give to the church goes and does. Okay.
Right. right? So like I look at you talking when we started, right? When you give to organizations, you're giving to institutional charities that are secular, right? They're non-religious entities.
Correct.
And that is a modern notion.
Huh.
Right. We have to get to the point where, because there was a time when charity, there was no Red Cross. It was just the church, and the church's, feelings about people in need changed, over the years, and in some cases was not favorable to people who did not, were not willing to become part of the church, or were,
not filling up the collection plate.
Right. Exactly.
Sure.
Right. And so I think that is the really interesting thing here. So when I start looking at charity, when you look at that sort of evolution, charity became a thing that that isn't specifically about giving to the needy in terms of people who have less, but much of it can be seen as giving of yourself to your community and to your extended family and to your people in need that maybe have enough to eat but are struggling with a specific instance. That's why I liked the cheese rolling bit, right? Sure, the money that comes from that, and that's now a global institution. In fact, the guy who holds the record is an American right now, right, in the cheese rolling thing.
The cheese
that's
roller.
A little addendum.
Okay.
Yeah. The money that comes into that supports the community for sure. And isn't that as much an expression of charity as anything else that we've talked about, right? Fighting diseases and doing all of the good that we're trying to do in the world.
Right.
But is it made harder for those who want to do good without a religious motivator?
In what way? Why would it be harder? Because it seems like access is so much easier, and you're not funneling it, or is it just because the net is so wide?
Well, the net is wide, one. And two, one of the things that the church really is able to do well when it's really cooking is guilt.
Oh, I see. So the idea of keeping your mind on charitable thoughts. You don't have this daily reminder. Right. I talked about how I'm so don't think about it enough that I just set up monthly things and walk away. And then every once in a while, Rocket Money's like, you're sending money here, right? And I'm like, yep. Yes.
Yep.
And,
everything's fine.
And then Rocket Money's like, you have 9 Hulu accounts. And I'm like, no. Thanks, Rocket Money.
That's no charity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a good point, that there is a daily reminder. But I feel like I haven't thought about the idea of church using money for the greater good of the community for like a while. Like, I feel like the churches that I used to go to and churches of my family, 2 of my dad's brothers are preachers in their own churches. The money, I believe, is going to the church. Like, it's you give in the collection plate, and then that's what keeps the lights on. I didn't think about them then using that money and applying it somewhere. When did that stop?
Well, for example, we, our local church, we went to a church for a long time. We haven't in also a long time. But when we were going, our money, our contribution to the tithe went to the church. And then the church used it to set up, 1, keep the lights on, but 2, address the unhoused population in this downtown Portland church and make sure there's food. And when people sleep on the stoop, that they wake up in the morning and they have, they're able to, try to figure out a way to get back on their feet. And the bigger churches have a bigger, supplies and resources and space. And, but that's very much a part of the engine of charity.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the things that, feeling constantly having this reminder that you might not be doing enough is a stock and trade of the church of a certain era.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what has shifted. And I'm not making a judgment on any of that, right? There's no judgment. I'm just saying that modern philanthropy looks different because so much of it is not rooted in this sort of religious foundation.
Right. Yeah. Instead, we have like Sarah McLachlan songs and sad looking dogs. Like that's our
Yes.
that's our altar. That's who's
Right.
making us. Yeah. As I race to the TV to change the channel, race to
Yeah.
the TV. I don't have a
does
remote
that?
control.
I have pliers
Yeah,
and rabbit
exactly.
ears.
Yeah.
But and that's I think the interesting thing. So this establishment of foundations, unaffiliated foundations, and nonprofit organizations, and international aid agencies, and those kinds of things are I think it makes it harder for them to get a foothold when they're not affiliated with this group that comes together every week.
Right.
Right. And
if they are really legitimately using as much of the money as they can not to keep the lights, I mean that they don't need to keep the lights on for the community, that does seem like it would cut down on, I don't know about these words, but like overhead. Some of the problems, if you look at like charity, the aforementioned Charity Navigator, some of the really big Red Crossy kind of institutions are unfortunately too big. Like the amount of money that needs to go to keep their lights on, because it's not one church in one community, it's the Red Cross. You are the possibility that your weekly donation is going to Post-its used in the office is very high for some of these charities. And that's really frustrating to know. And so, to be able to have it through a church, it seems more like one-to-one. Like just
particularly a local church.
Right. A local church would just be like a better funnel than sending it all the way across.
Well, right. And I mean, I make that point specifically because mega churches have exactly the same infrastructural challenges or administrative challenges that, that you mentioned when you're talking about the Red Cross, right? Like it's a massive organization that requires a massive amount of influx of capital to keep the lights on and keep its marketing up, right?
Yeah.
And smaller local personal connections to causes, right? Those kinds of things to like leverage your personal energy toward helping others is important. I think that's my big takeaway from reading up on this is that, I don't necessarily know how to be aware of causes writ large day to day. I don't know how to be aware of that, but I know the things that I care about, right? I care about heart disease because Dad had it.
Right.
I care about
gallbladders.
I definitely care.
Currently feeling
Is there a gallbladder society?
Yes.
Can I be a part of that?
Yeah.
I'd like to run it if nobody's in the seat.
If you are not a feeling friend, you have missed that Pete has a certain operation coming up tomorrow involving he's going to be one gallbladder down.
one down.
So become a feeling friend if you want to learn more about Pete's gallbladder.
Support the cause.
Yeah. You get stickers and all the gallbladder news you want.
My goodness. Okay. We should do a gallbladder sticker for this season. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Golly the gallbladder.
Perfect. You were saying the things that you care about, heart disease.
The thing that you care about, right?
Yeah.
Having that personal connection and and leveraging that, like being an advocate for that in some small part. And maybe that means, I care about heart disease. I'm going to research the American Heart Association and I'm going to be a part of that by donating to that. Events, social influencers. One of the things that is big, and I say this from from a place of just awareness, because one of the other podcasts that we host at True Story is the peer-to-peer marketing foundation's podcast, the P2P Soapbox. And peer-to-peer is a really important thing in this era of secularized charity.
What is peer-to-peer? What does that mean?
Peer-to-peer is the act of me telling you, hey, Tom, I care about heart disease and it's really important. And we have an event. It's a fun run or something where we all dress up as gallbladders to support the heart. And you need to come with me and it'll cost you $25 and you'll get a sticker and some shirts and stuff like that and maybe some Gatorade. And we're going to go prance around a park for a little while. And that event is, it gets in the news, it gets on television, it gets in all the places that you need it to get. Plus they make some money off of the registrants.
And that's peer-to-peer is you outreach
and me.
To me.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes.
You brought
and
someone into the fold.
It's the MLM of charity.
Got
and
it.
because it's not called MLM, it's called P2P.
Yeah.
That makes it good and charitable.
Got it. It's the Herbalife of charities. Perfect. Okay.
But it's hard to underscore just how important the mechanic is when somebody says to you, "I care about MS, and my husband has MS, and I'm involved in this thing. Would you come and be a part of it too?"
Uh-huh.
The answer should be yes, because it's
Right.
close to you. It's somebody that you know. It's somebody
Right.
that you're a part of. Make it a better thing. And that's I guess where I stand. We talked a lot about sloth last week as a moral challenge, right? Like is it still a moral failing if you are slothful in some way, shape, or form? And I feel like that's the challenge of institutionalized giving.
Yeah.
Is there no more moral challenge to charity because so much less of it is rooted in the church? And is that a problem? If you
Right.
still have it in your heart that people need to be lifted up together,
Yeah.
maybe that's the answer. I think that's the answer for me.
Okay. Sure. That
Man,
is
I've
your...
just been wandering around all over the place.
No, it's all been a through line. It's just so interesting that I never occurred to me that church. I mean, it seems so obvious when you put it out there, but I just don't think of church as being like that kind of community organizer. But it definitely is, and we need something. We do. I think that P2P, or we need that kind of outreach and recognition of what is needed. And maybe that's the way to do it. We have to make a whole bunch of tiny little personal churches.
Well, and where do you stand on this concept of social good?
What that?
Social good.
I mean, I know what those words are, but is that you're using it like a phrase?
Well, some of it is I'm minimizing the secret words, which is like corporate social responsibility.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because that's a controversial thing right now. Do you have a stance on CSR?
Why is it controversial? I'm a part of it in a way with young storytellers. A lot of the schools that I do are they're sort of adopted by studios around them.
Yeah.
And so all of my mentors, the adults that come in, are all from like DreamWorks or NBC Universal or something like that. Because then the company is allowed to say, look what we're doing. I guess they sort of have this culture where there's a number of different charities or nonprofits and you pick one, and a number of people pick young storytellers. And then I'm a corporate sort of liaison for that. And that all seems great. What's the controversial part of it?
It's a challenge because, companies, I think, they're trying to put their sort of organizational heart out there, right? And say, here are things that we can do that might be good. And yet, of course, because it's a big company and, we're attuned, I think, right now to be skeptical of the operations of giant mega industrial complexes. They are criticized for greenwashing, inconsistent practices, right? Like, engaging in superficiality to create image rather than making a meaningful change.
I see. Okay,
right?
So just putting on a big poster that says, look what we did, and not really doing anywhere near as much as they could.
Yeah, or we're gonna plant more trees, and then they plant more trees and also spend 85% more of their budget in carbon offsets while still creating as much environmental damage as they did. Lack of transparency and accountability. There's no one out there saying, like, looking at the CSR reports and judging them. Profit motive, right? Again, when you're saying that there's a corporate image at work,
right.
Like they're just trying to make themselves look better. And fundamentally, these programs can be seen as focusing on symptoms rather than root causes of
the system,
of whatever issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand the frustration with that, but also the other option was do nothing. Yeah. And they did that for a really long time. I prefer,
so long.
I mean, and a lot of the newer companies and startups are adopting more of like a Bombas socks mentality of one for us, one for them kind of a thing, which is very valuable. I mean, I guess there's something, we're capitalism and we are gross a lot of the time. And so saying you're doing some, but you're not doing enough, I guess I go back and forth. Probably it depends on the company But a lot of the times it's like, but you're doing something.
Yeah.
And that's a lot better than it used to be. We used to have children in mines, and now you're donating socks to unhoused people when no one asked you to.
Right.
There's something wonderful about that.
And you know what? If that creates a better image for your awesome socks, so be it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm okay with that. I think the challenge that I have with all of the anti-CSR arguments really are, it's because they end in, you should go back to doing nothing, right? To your very point, which is disgusting, right? Progress, even incremental progress is progress.
Yeah.
And I do think there's something to this idea of industrial peer pressure that says, look, I can be charitable in the way we treat the environment because we know that any little step we make toward making the environment better is better for our community. It is a charitable investment for the people who live around us in our city, on our planet. And I think that's one of the interesting things that comes out of these arguments is that people are, this is my latest thing that I get really mad at.
Okay.
Is that we're so focused on competition across borders, like make my country better or my state better or my city better. And so few people stop and say, what can we do to be cosmopolitanists, right? Like, what can we do to be like, let's make things better for the planet, the whole planet we live on. What if the whole planet were a state or were a single country?
Yeah.
What would that be like, do you think? Would that be cool if we could all get better and healthier and breathe better and drink better water?
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of thing, like when I think about charity, bring it back to charity.
Yeah.
All of this stuff matters because any investment is a charitable investment for the good of the people around us. And that matters to me, I think.
Agreed. And I'm not making a pun here. That is a charitable way to look at it.
You can make a pun and be right at the same time.
I did it. Once upon a time, a man walking along a beach saw a boy picking up starfish and throwing them into the sea. He asked the boy why he was throwing starfish into the sea. The boy replied,
"The tide is going out. If I don't throw them in, they'll dry up and die."
The man smiled patronizingly and said,
"But there are miles of beach and thousands of starfish on every mile. You can't possibly make a difference."
The boy smiled, bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it into the sea.
"Well,"
he said,
"I made a difference for that one."
Well, it ain't cheap being poor, and I can't take any more of the tickets and the taxes and the fees. I work hard for my pay, and they take it away. Like they don't care, I got a family to feed.
Thank you all so much for joining us this episode. This week's tune is It Ain't Cheap Being Poor by Ben Bostic. Tom, what are we doing next week?
Hey, Pete.
Please tell me we get to jump back into the fires of hell.
We are diving right back into sins. Get out of the way, Charity, because it's time for Lust. Yes, the parental advisory episode. Warning, the existence of sex will probably be acknowledged. So,
guess what? I'll bet the church has an opinion. We'll find out next week. Until then, I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Tommy Metz III. Thank you so much for downloading. We'll be back next week with all the feelings, sins, and virtue.
I work hard for my pay, and they take it away, and they wonder why the hell I'm so poor. It ain't no wonder why the hell I'm so poor.
And will you put in a ocean noise?
No.
Okay.
It's going to be just like construction zone.
Oh, interesting. Like a child
Walls
screaming.
falling down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a phone ringing, but it's one long ring. It's not intermittent rings.
It's the longest modem connection sound string that you've ever heard.
Perfect. Okay.